In this video, we'll explore Flask, containers, Podman, Docker, GitHub, and all those things. But because it's a lot of things, we'll just start, see how far we get, creating a Python web API, something like that. So we've got a GitHub account, which is great. And we're going to use container hosting just to quickly set up the account. So we'll get on container hosting. Oh no, let's see how far we get. We just want some container hosting, and we'll use another web service. Here we go. So we'll use this to connect to container hosting, and we'll use that to quickly create a repo that has everything we need. It has a sample Flask application. Here we go. And it has a sample Docker container description as well. So once you've got that connected and set up, you'll find there's a README how to get set up. So the first thing you got to do is clone your code down. So there's some template code already. So I'm just going to copy that. And let's see how far we go. So let's put that into documents, programming, and we'll call it my Flask. Nope, let's create it first. mkdir, make a directory, and then we'll go into it. cd, there we go. So we're going to clone that in there. So we'll do git clone. Oops. So this is pulling down or downloading the code to our local computer. Let's go inside the directory. And I'll turn on a program to show the keys. Show keys. I think it's called show key. Sudo no, I can't find out what that is. Pressed keys. Let's find out quickly. Ubuntu show keys pressed. It's called show key. This is the one. Screen key. Let's see. Have we got it installed? There it is. Screen key. Nice. Let's see if it's working. Hello. Nice. That's much better. So you can see what I'm typing and what I'm mistyping. Fantastic. So now we've got the code and it's cloned. Let's open it up in VS Code. So we'll say, we'll open the code in VS Code. We'll say that we trust the author and we'll continue reading the documentation. So firstly, let's make a simple change. We've already got the Flask application hosted, which is great because we've already got a URL which we can use, which is live. You can send that to your friends and share your application, which is fantastic, very quick. Let's make a quick change. So we'll change the content. Let's do that right away. So we'll go into the web and we'll say into app.py. And somewhere we're looking for that content. Where is that? Okay, it's in the templates index. Here we go. Hello, this is my Flask app. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to add the file and commit it. So I'm going to say added hello to homepage. Okay, so I'm going to add the file or stage the file, and I'm going to commit the file. And then I'm going to push the changes. This action will follow. Okay, let's do that. So now that's pushing up, doesn't take very long. We'll go back to GitHub and we'll see that if I do a refresh, oh, I can't see it. Where's that gone? Okay, I need to set up my keys first. So let's do that. So it's not able to sync. So you might get this permission error too. So let's see if we can sort that out. So we're going to get SSH keys and we're going to do new key. First we need to generate a key. Now if you're on Linux, it's really easy. All you need to do is do SSH keygen, press enter, and you can copy out your key and things like that. So I'm just going to pause the video for my public key. Actually, that's not necessary. I'm going to cat my .ssh key and we'll do id rsa.pub and we'll take that out and we will paste it here. And key's already in use on a different account. So let's do a different key, SSH keygen, and we'll say we want to save it in ISA null packets. There we go. We won't put a passphrase for it. Let's add that key. So cat SSH IDRSA null packets.pub. Very important that we show the pub key and not the private key. Okay, let's put that in. So I'll paste that in. And now we've got our key added. Now we should be able to do our git push and git pull now. Let's see if we have to close and exit VS Code. We might need to. Let's try that. And we'll say code here. And go back to the UI for git inside VS Code. Let's see if we can sync now. No, okay. We'll forget VS Code for now because it's actually getting in the way. And we'll do SSH eval SSH agent. So that turns on the agent within the shell. And now we'll do SSH add. And what do we want to add? We want to add that new key that we've just generated. There we go. So we'll forget about VS Code and just use a different editor. It doesn't really matter which you use. You can use whichever you like as long as you've got your keys loaded. So now we can do our git remote vshow. And we can see that we've got our remote added okay. That's because it was cloned. I can do git push origin main. And because we've loaded the key, we'll be able to push, although it's using the wrong key at the moment, which is unfortunate. Let's see GitHub. So we'll say host GitHub host name GitHub or github.com. And we'll say, I think it's called key file, or is it called identity file? SSH config identity file. I think it's called key file. Let's have a look. I'm looking for the name. Identity file is what we want. Okay, so we want to say identity file is .ssh idrsa. What was it? There it is. And that should help us out with what we need. So let's go back to our see which keys we've got loaded, and we've got the key loaded. I think it's the one we want, or is it this one? Let's see, SSH add -L. That's the one we need, this one here. In fact, let's unload the keys so that we know exactly which one we've got. is it delete all? There we go. We've removed all the entities, or at least I thought I had. And remove, delete all keys from the agent. Yeah, capital D. Interesting, that's all there. Let's echo the agent, make sure we've got it. No, SSH agent. No, we've not, that's good. So we'll say eval SSH agent. We're good. SSH add. Before we do that, we'll do the list. Whoops. We'll do the list. Perfect. And then we'll do the add IDRSA. Fantastic. Now we'll do the list. Great, we've got just what we want. Let's see if we can do a fetch. Still using the wrong one. Let's see if we can get that sorted. Is that the reason? Git fetch. Let's try again. Yes. There we go. So there we do our git push origin main, and we're great to go. Fantastic. And now what we'll see is on our repo, we've just got that change has been added. And what's happening here is we've got a new deployment that's going and a new release that's going. So if we keep refreshing this page here, eventually we'll see that change go live. So if we can even follow along. So you can see that it's publishing that application live. Here we go. So it's building the container. We haven't gone over the container, but we can have a look quickly. Code. So inside our code directory, we have a file called Docker file, which is a way of describing what is inside a container and the layers that get built up. So it's a Python 3 container, and we copy the requirements file, which is here. We copy that into the container, which is all the dependencies. And there's a setting on VS Code which can keep the files open. I've forgotten which one it is, but it can be quite confusing if you go from one file to the other and you want to keep it open. You can double click, I think, but that's, for me, confusing. So there we go. We can copy in the files. We've installed the requirements. And the very first thing that the container does when it starts is run the entry point script, which is to start Gunicorn. And on the left-hand side now, you can see that the application is deployed successfully, which is cool. We've got lots of green text. And if we look on the site itself, we should, if we're lucky. Yeah, great. There we go. We've got the hello, this is my Flask app. And we can keep doing it this way. But if you like me, you like a much faster feedback loop than that. You can also run the code locally and do the changes there and then push them later. So let's do that as well. So first we've got to make sure that Docker is running. Yes, it is. Cool. So we can follow the instructions and we say view your app locally. And we're going to use Docker Compose up. Oh, here it is, Docker Compose up. I do apologize. And the steps for installing Docker here. So make sure you're in the right directory where you've got the Docker Compose file, because that's what Docker Compose is going to read. And we'll say Docker Compose up. And what that's going to do is build the container locally, which is all of the same steps that you just saw on the action for here. And it's going to try and run them locally. Now I've already got a container running somewhere else, which I'm going to have to stop first. Can you see this error here? Port already in use. So I'm going to just see if I've got this open somewhere else and stop it. which it might be here. Yeah, there it is. Fantastic. So I've got rid of that. I'm going to do the same command again. Docker compose up, press enter, and straight away you might get a delay because you've got to download all of the container dependencies first. So that might take a few minutes depending on how fast your internet connection is. But then you'll see you've got this waiting and booting, etc., etc. And it's listening on port 5000. What does that mean? It means if you go to 5000, you can see, hello, here's the Flask app. Now, if you wanted to know the port, you need to know where to look. And that is in the Docker Compose file. So where is that? Here it is. And you can see here, this is your local machine on the left, and on the right-hand side is the inside the container. So that means from our web browser here, we're going to port 5000, and it's going to go to port 5000 also inside the container. Why? Because inside the container, when it starts in entry point, it's listening on port 5000. So it marries those together. And if you wanted to make sure that's the case, you can see docker ps and go to the right. You can see that Docker is mapping or port forwarding port 5000 to port 5000 inside the container for a TCP connection. So what do I mean? What's the point of that? It means we can more quickly iterate. So let's say we want to add a bit more detail to this application. Let's introduce some very, very basic style. So in the base HTML, we'll create some CSS. So we've already got a template file here, and we'll say that we want our font family to be sans serif. Font family, and we'll say sans serif. Okay, we'll refresh. Oh no, it's not automatic. That's a shame. We'll have to make that automatic at some point. But you can just stop the container, Control C, and start it again. And it's still not different. What's going on? Let's find out why. Is it because I've got cache? No, it's not because I've got cache. Disable cache. Ah, 404 not found. Static style.css. It is there though. Static style.css. Is it being ignored in the build perhaps? Let's see. Let's look at the compose as well. So we're mounting the into source app. The file is definitely there, he says. Let's find out. Docker ps, and we want to say docker exec. We're going to go inside the container and just have a look, see what's in there. Yeah, we've got static folder, and we've got the file, so it's all good. Why are we not reading that? Let's see what the directory is. So we're on the app, and we've got the base HTML. Yep, URL for. Let's see what URL is being fetched. Let's see if we can open it directly. No, that is strange. Let's find out what's going on the container. Got the 404 static. Okay, I'm not going to try and fix that right away. I'm going to see if I can change something else and see if I can see that changed. There's a troubleshooting step. So let's change something on the home page which is closer. So hello, goodbye. Let's just say goodbye. And refresh that. No, nothing there either. Okay. I think what might be an issue here is we need to rebuild the container. It's not really something we want to have to do every time. So I've added the build option. So I've stopped the container and I've restarted with the build option, and let's see. There we go, we do get goodbye. What about the start sheet? Okay, the start sheet's still not there. We'll have to work out what's going on there. but at least we know that we can get that changed on the home page. So we can say, let's see in the base, we'll put our style away from styles.css for now, and we'll put it inside our base HTML, inside a style tag as an inline style. Sorry, as a header, not inline. So we'll say body, and we'll say font family, font family sans. There it is. Okay, and we'll stop and start again, and refresh. Refresh. There we go. Now we've got our sans serif, and we're all good to go. Obviously, we want to add live reloading to this, but great. We can start doing something a bit more interesting, such as adding another page like about, for example. Let's do that now. Let's add another root. So we'll say, go to our app, and we will add another root, app.root, and we'll say about. And we'll create a function called about. So this is going to be our about page. The about page. Okay, just to describe what the website's for, right? And for this, we'll start off by just saying return about page. Okay. And let's do our normal stop and rebuild, which doesn't take very long, thank goodness. And there we go. Now we've got an about page. Fantastic. Let's add some HTML for it, because at the moment we're just doing text, which isn't very nice. So we'll say create a new template for it. So we'll do a new a new file called about HTML. I misspelled that, so let's correct that. HTML. Fantastic. We'll use the index as a template, so I'm copying that and putting it into our new template. And we'll say this is the about page header, and we'll say welcome. Let's just put this in a h1 tag actually. h1, and we'll say about. Okay, and we'll put a paragraph in. Here's my about page. Fantastic. So again, let's rebuild. And within a few moments, you can see that we've got the about page loaded. It's not loading anything different though. What have I forgotten to do? I've forgotten to edit the return. So we're returning the string still. We want to return our template by doing a render template. And I think we called it about.html. Yes, there we go. So back to our starting and stopping. Here we go. Do a good old refresh. Try again. This is the about page. There we go. And what's this at the top? Flasker. Okay, that's always there. Let's change that too. I don't particularly like it. Where's that coming from? Is it coming from the index maybe, or the base? Yeah, I don't want that in there. So that's going to be the navigation. So we'll create a link to the home page with a title equals home page, or just home. There we go. So that's a bit more useful and a bit less loud. There we go. So you see we're starting to build up something here, and it probably makes sense to add a little spacer or something. And we'll put a about and a link to the about page there as well. Say about. And then online, of course, you can search for some nice CSS to make things look pretty. But the focus here is on the functionality, which is just as important. So there we go, we've got home and we've got about. Home and about. Let's make it live. So because we've got all these changes, what we want to do is add them and then commit them. So we're going to do a git status. So just to maximize that window, a git status. Notice that we're using git directly, just as good. And we can have a look at the difference of what we've changed. So we've added that root for about. Let's let's commit that. So I'll do a git add templates. What was the path to it? Git add source web templates about, sorry, index about, yeah, about, because that's a new page. And we want to add the web app.py. And let's have a look at the status now. Oh, we've still got the differences to this one. Okay, which we added those links to. Let's add those. And also we'll add the template as well. Nice. Can't really see the diff there because of the key, so I'll move that up. There we go. I quite like the word hello rather than goodbye. Let's quickly change that. And we'll say hello. Nice. Let's add that as well. Yeah, I'll create the diff. Yep, it's got what we want. Actually, that's not quite what I wanted. Are we gone still to hello? Yeah, we're fine. Cool. So we wanted to get commit message. We added about page. There we go. Let's push that to GitHub. And if we look at GitHub as we go, we'll be able to see it all change, which is quite fun. So I'm going to press on enter. And oh, it's rejected. Why is it rejected? The reason for that is we have another action, which is called cut release, which creates a version. Every time that you publish, you get a new version released. And that's automatically. The version number is automatic. And what we're going to do is pull down that version change because automatically there's a change log that gets added and it tells you what was added based on the commit messages and things like that. So you don't have to worry about writing what changed because it's in your commit messages anyway. We've also got this warning about committing to main and pushing to main. That's because you should create a different branch usually when creating and pushing new changes and then merging those in. And we'll do that too. But for now, what we'll do is do a git fetch to get the details of those changes, and then we'll do a git pull origin main. But before I press enter, I'm going to move up so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to do a git pull origin main to get the changes. And what's this? I need to specify default strategy, and we'll go with the default, which is that one, to not rebase. And then we'll do a git pull again, and we'll merge that. So I'm doing Control O, enter, Control X to get those changes. And now we've got that change log. Now we can do our git push. So it's pushing those changes that we've done. And if we go to our page, our repo, we can see, great, 20 seconds ago, we've got that commit. And we'll see on our actions, we've got two things running. We've got the release pipeline happening, and we've got deploy happening too. But perhaps the most interesting one is deploy because it's making it real. So if we go over to our live website, this is our local host, we get the URL for our real application, paste that in. Oh, sorry, not that URL, this one here on the slightly below. Okay, so it's not finished deploying yet, taking a while, 30 seconds. We could start doing more code whilst we watch this, but at least the first time it's kind of fun to watch. And we can see it's building a container, and eventually it will stop the existing container that's running and replace it with our new shiny application that has the about page. So we've gone from an empty repository all the way up to deployment, and everything is stored on Git, and the deployment is automated. And also we've got automated releases as well. If we have a quick look at that, we can see that we've got added the about page here on the release notes, which is kind of nice, kind of cool. And on the releases page here, you can see you've got version 1, version 2, version 3. And I suspect it's finished now. Yes, so if we refresh, you ready? 1, 2, 3, boom. Now we've got our actual page live, and we can add more and more useful, cool things to that, such as an API. Why not do that now? Let's do it. Let's add something, let's make it a bit more interesting. We'll add API Flask, and let's start creating a very simple API. So we are going to have to add some additional Python packages for this. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing we'll do is we'll create a Python virtual environment. Venv, venv. What that is doing is it's creating a copy of all of Python. And you see you've got a new folder called venv, which you have to activate. Very important that you activate it. If you're on Windows, it's a different file. I think it's called PS1 or something like that, but it's in the same directory. And then you get the name of the folder here. Then it's safe to do pip install API Flask. That is a package. API Flask is a package which makes it quick to write OpenAPI compliant applications using Flask. And as always, read the documentation. So we've just done the pip install API Flask, and then we're going to update our requirements file. I've actually forgotten where that is, so I'm going to look in the hierarchy here. Here we go. So we've just added, oh, I've noticed that the screen keys has stopped. So let's try and add that back. There we go, it's back. So let's get the name of the version of the package we've just installed, because remember we did a pip install API Flask. So we've got API Flask, and we're going to put that into our requirements folder, file. Why? Because when we publish that, the server needs to know when it's building the container what the container needs to have all of the information it needs to run the application. Anyway, let's get some API calls. So let's start by reading the documentation. And yeah, we'll use the pet example. Why not? First, we'll start with a class of a pet. And we'll say pet in and pet out. So here we go. We're going to say class pet in schema. Now, where does that come from? Let's double check. Schema. So there we go, from API Flask. And also, before we do that, let's actually properly set up API Flask. So API Flask wraps Flask. So what we're going to do is, instead of Flask app, we're going to do Flask API Flask. Let's see where that is inside app. And we want to say from API Flask import API Flask. We actually don't need to use Flask anymore. We're going to use API Flask. That's the very beginning. All you have to do at the beginning to start using API Flask. We're going to do the rebuild just to make sure that everything's still starting okay before we do lots of changes. Back to port 5000 on our local host. Okay, it's building that. Ah, no, we got a build error. The user requested Flask 2.2, depends on Flask 2. So we need to upgrade our version of Flask. Let's see what that version is that we've got here. 2.2. We'll just move this to Flask, and then we'll do the rebuild again. Okay, so it's installing Flask 2.2.2. I just saw that on the output here on the right hand side, and then it's going to get to API Flask. Fantastic. Okay, let's just do a quick docker exec, docker compose exec, because we need to update our requirements file with the version that we've just installed so that we know what version is being installed. So we're going to exec into the app, and we're going to do a pip freeze inside here just to know what version we've got installed of Flask. So we've got Flask, oh dear, we've got Flask 2.1.3. We've gone down a little bit. Is that because that's the version that API Flask supports? Perhaps. I'm not going to go into that right now. But what I am going to do is update the requirements file with a specific version that we know is compatible with API Flask. And I'm going to move it up as well so it's side by side just for readability. Okay, so now that that's running, simply by doing that, we've got this new URL available to us called docs. And look at that. We've got a OpenAPI compatible representation of the docs. Now, obviously, this isn't an API yet, but we can start creating our own. And we've already got one root called health, which may already be JSON. Let's see. No, it's not ready yet. Okay, but we could add one straight away. Let's do that now. So we'll say, let's just say the date. So we'll create an API root called date. So define date, and it will be a new app.root, and we'll call, say, /date. And for that, we want to return the date. So we'll say from datetime import datetime, and we will return the date. So we'll say date equals string of datetime.now, and we will return that date. And we'll return it as a dictionary as well. Sorry, as a list. The dictionary, it's a dictionary. Okay, let's just rebuild quickly. There's a warning there, which I've got my eye on. Okay. So firstly, let's check it's working by going to /date. Just waiting for it to build. Internal server error. Why is that? The view function does not be a string, but it was a set. It was a set. So this is Python, and we need to say that it's a dictionary because it's a set if it's got a single item. Otherwise, it's fine like that. So we've added the comma to turn it into a list. If we have a look inside Python and we say type, so 1, 2, 3, for example. So that's a set, but the moment we add a comma, it's a list. Oh no, it's not. Interesting. Let's not do that. I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's return a list. There we go. Another thing that we could do, which might be more preferable actually, is to do date is date. And that's more readable for front-end development, like with React and Angular, etc., etc. So we'll do that again. Okay, this is the old one that I've not saved previously, so that's working fine. Do our rebuild, waiting for the container to rebuild. And there we go. We've got our JSON response. We know the endpoint is working. Let's make it pretty with the docs, sorry. Here we go. So we've got the date. We can try it out. We can execute. Fantastic. We've got the date. let's publish, let's make it live. So remember, we go to git status and we want to have a look at the differences. If you don't like that view, we could have a look at the diff on VS Code. So you can see we've got a difference to requirements. Yes, I like that. We'll change that. Oh, sorry, we'll keep it. And we've got our change to app.py where we added the new root date and we installed API Flask. So we're going to add that change. What other changes did we make? I changed the dbpy. Oh, I just added a new line. I'll ignore that by pressing undo and discard those changes. Cool. So I'll add a message, added /date and API Flask. So we'll commit that. And then I'll do on the terminal, I'll do a git push as well. So git push origin main. Oops, I need to do a git fetch first because we need to get that changelog down. Git pull origin main, and we'll see the changelog come down. There it is, there's a changelog. Now we can do the git push origin main. Pressing enter, that's doing the push. Over we go to our repo on GitHub, and we can see, yes, there we go. We've got that pushing up. And we've got the change. So added the about page. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that the same one that we wanted? Let's see, git status. Yeah, that's everything we wanted. We've got the change to source, and we've got added the, there it is, yes, because it's two, there's the merge from the release, and there's the update of the adding of the date endpoint. And we've also got the deployment job running, which is here, and that's going to make it live on the internet, so you can experiment with it as well. So it's doing exactly the same as what we were doing locally. It's building the container. It's going to stop the current container that's live over here. So notice it's still running our old version. And very shortly, it's going to stop. It's finishing. There we go. I think exporting image, exporting layers. And it's releasing the container. Checking for pre-deployed task. In fact, whilst we're waiting, we can like add a background color or something to this homepage to make it a bit more interesting on localhost. So let's add a homepage. But I think it might be finished actually. It's deploying. Yes, I think it's done. Let's go to /docs. There we go. You've got your container live. You've got your API with a date. I suggest coming up with more exciting, interesting API endpoints, but that's the process. We've also got a database connection that we could start using too, which is obviously interesting because you can insert, you can do post requests. At the moment, we've just got GET requests, but we can do that as well. So yeah, you've got version controlled, easy to push, easy to work locally as well. And yeah, why not?